Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The date is 26th Dhul Qa'dah 1447 on the Islamic calendar, corresponding to 14th May 2026 on the Gregorian calendar. And you are watching Muslim World News with me, your host Abdulrahman Mohamed. Let's dive in headfirst and take a look at today's headlines. On our first story, Kenya alert over hantavirus outbreak. On the world scale, Iran defies US ceasefire pressure. On business, private sector struggles as cost rises. And finally on sports, Kenyan stars receive heroic welcome from Tokyo. On to our first story right here in Kenya. Kenya's Ministry of Health has heightened surveillance at all national borders today following reports of a deadly hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship currently in the Atlantic. The advisory issued on Friday, May 8, 2026 comes after the World Health Organization confirmed 8 cases of the virus aboard the MV Hondius. The outbreak has already claimed 3 lives, with victims suffering for severe respiratory failure characterized as hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Director General for Health, Dr. Patrick Amoth, confirmed that while there are 0 cases in Kenya, airports and seaports have intensified screening for travelers. The ministry is particularly focused on those who may have had contact with the vessel or traveled through South America region where the Andes strain of the virus is endemic. Health officials are urging Kenyans to maintain strict hygiene and rodent control, as the virus is primarily spread through the droppings and saliva of infected mice and rats. Symptoms can take nearly 2 months to appear, making early detection and travel history disclosure vital for anyone feeling unwell. During a public health briefing in Nairobi, Dr. Patrick Amoth stated, "The Ministry of Health remains committed to safeguarding public health. We have activated our preparedness systems to ensure that any suspected case is caught and isolated at the point of entry." As international contact tracing continues for the ship's former passengers, Kenyan authorities maintain that the country's early warning systems are fully operational. Now, on our next story, violence has broken out in the Somali capital as thousands of residents rally against a government order to evict families from state-claimed land, leaving at least 1 person dead. Security forces used live ammunition to disperse crowds in the Dainil district, claiming the gatherings were unauthorized and posed a threat to public order. Organizers, including former President Sharif Sheikh Ahmed, argued that the reclamation policy is a veiled land grab. They cite reports that over 36,000 people were evicted in April alone without alternative housing or compensation, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. The timing of evictions has intensified political friction, with President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud's mandate set to expire this Friday, May 15th. The opposition is using the outcry over housing to challenge the government's recent term extension and demand a stop to the demolitions. Former Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khair condemned the security response, stating, "It is with profound grief that I condemn in the strongest possible term the killing of a civilian today. Our people deserve housing, security, not bullets." As the Banadir Regional Administration moves to temporarily suspend the eviction policy to ease tension, the city remains on edge ahead of this week's political deadline. On our next story, hopes for a lighter tax burden have been dashed for millions of Kenyan workers today, as the newly published Finance Bill 2026 fails to include the widely expected salary tax relief promised by the National Treasury. The Finance Bill 2026, unveiled on Tuesday, May 5th, focuses primarily on aggressive revenue collection rather than individual relief. While the Treasury had previously suggested a move to ease the payee burden, the actual document maintains existing high tax bans while introducing a new early tax return deadline of April 30th. Public outcry is mounting over new levies tucked into the bill, including a hike in residential rental income tax from 7.5% to 10% and a 25% excise duty on mobile phones. Experts note that while the bill avoids the radical tax hikes of 2024, it silently tightens the belt on the middle class through increased compliance cost. There are small concessions for specific groups. The bill proposes increasing the tax-exempt daily per diem from 2,000 to 10,000 shillings and offers relief for pension-related gratitudes. However, for the average salaried Kenyan, already grappling with SHIF and housing levy deductions, those minor adjustments are seen as too little, too late. Reacting to the missing reliefs, tax expert Willis Otieno stated during a televised debate, the government is playing a psychological game. They aren't raising the headline rates, but they are squeezing every last penny through enforcement and shifting deadlines. It's relief on paper, but a raid on the pocket. With the bill now headed to the committee stage for public participation, all eyes are on Parliament to see if they will reinstate the promised reliefs before the July 1st implementation. Now let's focus on Northeastern, where residents in remote parts of Garissa County are finally accessing clean water near their homes following the construction of boreholes and water kiosks under a World Bank-supported water project. For years, families in villages such as Yumbis and Hagadera spent hours every day searching for water across dry and harsh terrain. The burden mainly affected women and children, with many learners missing school to help their families fetch water. The new water points installed through the Water and Sanitation Development Project are now easing that struggle by bringing water closer to residents and livestock. We thank God because water is now close to our homes. Before this, we spent many hours walking long distances in search of water, said Ambia Hussein, a resident of Yumbis village. The project is funded by the World Bank and implemented through the Ministry of Water together with the Garissa Water and Sewerage Company. Officials say the program also includes sanitation improvement and community training to help maintain the system after completion. At Labisgale village, some residents have already created small businesses around the new supply, using modified tuk-tuks to transport water to households. The Water and Sanitation Development Project was launched in 2018 to improve access to safe water in arid and semi-arid regions across Kenya. In Garissa, the initiative includes solar-powered boreholes designed to reduce operational costs and ensure a steady supply of water for both domestic use and livestock. Now, our next story is still on Northeastern. Religious leaders from Northeastern Kenya have raised concerns over increasing HIV infections in the region, calling for urgent action to tackle stigma, denial, and low uptake of testing and treatment services. The concerns emerged during a meeting in Garissa organized by the National Syndemic Disease Control Council in partnership with the Supreme Council of Kenya, Muslims, SUPKEM. Faith leaders from Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, and Tana River counties said cultural beliefs and fear of discrimination continue to prevent many people from seeking medical help. According to NSDCC data, at least 1,895 people are currently living with HIV in Garissa County. We must live with realities. We cannot continue living in denial. HIV and AIDS is in our society, and we must join hands and use our spaces to pass the message, said NSDCC official Halima Dahir. Religious leaders attending the forum pledged to use mosques, madrasas, and community gatherings to increase awareness and encourage people to seek testing and treatment. Sheikh Muhammad Noor from Tana River called for stronger grassroots sensitization, while Sheikh Abbas Hassan urged communities to confront misconceptions surrounding HIV infections. SUPKEM Director of Health and Sanitation, Dr. Hussein Imam, said engaging men and boys and reducing stigma would be critical in controlling the spread of the virus. National statistics show that people aged between 30 and 54 account for the majority of HIV infections in Kenya, while women representing about 65% of reported cases. Health officials say counties in northeastern continue facing challenges such as limited health facilities, long travel distances, and dependence on donor-funded programs, even as leaders push for greater community involvement in fighting the disease. On our next story, members of parliament raised concerns over the poor accommodation conditions facing the GSU officers at the GSU Camp Mombasa during an inspection visit on 7th Wednesday. The lawmakers criticized the overcrowded and poorly maintained housing units after touring the camp through the National Assembly Security Committee. A parliamentary committee on security matters, headed by Gabriel Tongoyo, visited the camp and described the environment as unsuitable for officers responsible for maintaining public safety and national security. Speaking after inspecting the camp, Tongoyo said, and I quote, "The conditions we found are worrying because officers cannot effectively perform their duties while living in overcrowded and uncomfortable spaces." The inspection revealed that several officers were sharing small rooms while others stayed in aging buildings and temporary shelters with poor sanitation facilities. Lawmakers said the situation could negatively affect officers' health, morale, and productivity. The committee pledged to push for better fundings and reforms aimed at improving welfare standards within the General Service Unit. Now, our next story focuses on South Africa, where Cyril Ramaphosa is facing renewed political pressure after South Africa's Constitutional Court found that Parliament failed to properly handle attempts to begin impeachment proceedings against him. Opposition parties argued that lawmakers acted unconstitutionally when they stopped the impeachment process linked to the controversial theft of foreign currency from the president's farm in 2020. Reacting to the judgment, Julius Malema said the president should leave office and deal with the legal and political consequences surrounding the matter. The impeachment process carries serious consequences and it deserves full attention, Malema said. The case centers on money reportedly stolen from Fala Fala Farm, a property owned by Ramaphosa. Questions were raised about the source and handling of the cash, although the president maintained that it came from livestock sales and denied breaking any laws. The court's ruling now raises the possibility of fresh impeachment discussions in Parliament, where the Africa National Congress no longer holds full control after recent elections. A woman in Ethiopia has given birth to quintuplets after spending more than a decade hoping to become a mother. The babies, 4 boys and 1 girl, were delivered at Hiwot Fana Specialized Hospital in Harare region, where doctors confirmed that both the mother and newborns were in stable condition. Speaking after the delivery, Badriya Adam described the birth as a blessing after years of emotional struggle and prayers for a child. "I prayed for 1 child, but Allah has blessed me with 5, she said. According to the doctors at the hospital, the 35-year-old conceived naturally without fertility treatment, making the case extremely rare. Medical experts say naturally occurring quintuplets pregnancies are uncommon worldwide. Badriya said she had faced emotional pain and social pressure during the 12 years she was unable to have children before finally becoming a mother. Now for our next story, Bolivia is at a standstill today as nationwide general strikes enter its 10th day, with protesters across the country demanding the resignation of President Rodrigo Paz. The strike, called by the Bolivian Workers' Confederation on May 2, 2026, has paralyzed major cities including La Paz and Cochabamba. Demonstrators have erected hundreds of roadblocks to protest a new land reform law and a severe fuel crisis that has left gas stations empty and driven up the cost of living. Tensions boiled over midweek when riot police fired tear gas at teachers and miners near the presidential palace. Protesters are demanding a 20% increase in the minimum wage and a halt to government plans to privatize state-owned energy and mining companies. The situation is further complicated by a regional oil shock, with global crude prices surging. Bolivia's reliance on imported fuel has led to rationing, sparking an indefinite shutdown by the National Transport Union. Indigenous groups have joined the march, warning that new legislations put the ancestral lands at risk of seizure by large corporations. Vicente Salazar, executive leader of the Tupac Katari Federation, emphasized the exhaustion of the rural provinces, stating, "The people are already tired. The 20 provinces have decided, the people have overtaken us, and the sole demand is the resignation of Rodrigo Paz." As the government refuses to back down from its austerity path, the blockades continue to tighten their grip on the capital, leaving the country's political future in the balance. Now, our next story takes us to the Middle East, where the ruins of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital are seeing new life today as massive volunteer efforts begin the monumental task of restoring the enclaved largest medical complex. On Sunday, May 10, 2026, hundreds of local residents and international aid workers joined forces to clear debris and prepare for structural repairs. A key focus of the project is the renovation of the Eastern Maternity Building, which is set to house 75 beds, and the restoration, backed by the UAE funding, includes a symbolic green initiative. Volunteers have begun planting olive trees in the hospital's courtyard, a move intended to reclaim the site from the scars of war and provide a sense of peace for future patients. This community-led surge comes as international health agencies warn of a total collapse of medical services in the region. With many of Gaza's specialized clinics still out of commission, the partial revival of Al-Shifa is being hailed as a phoenix moment for Palestinians' healthcare system. In a statement on the hospital grounds, Al-Shifa director Dr. Mohamed Abu Salmiya expressed the community's sentiment, saying, "These trees and these repairs are our answer to the destruction. Al-Shifa will always be the heart of Gaza, and we will not let its pulse stop." As the first ward prepares to admit patients by late June, the revival of Al-Shifa stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of Gazan people. On our next story, Israeli military forces have raided the Ramallah headquarters of Palestine TV, seizing vital broadcasting equipment and forcing the official Palestinian Authority channel into an immediate blackout. The raid took place at approximately 3:30 a.m. local time on Monday, May 11, 2026. Armed soldiers entered the facility, dismantling cameras and transmission equipment, which were later loaded into military trucks. The station's signal was cut shortly thereafter, leaving millions of viewers without access to the channel's news bulletins. This latest operation follows a broader trend of media suppression in the region. Last week, the Israeli government utilized new emergency regulations to seize equipment from Al Jazeera and other local news agencies, citing concerns over incitement and threats to national security. The Palestinian Ministry of Information has labeled the raid a war crime against the truth, noting that the destruction of media infrastructure prevents the documentation of ongoing events in the West Bank. The Israeli military has not yet issued a formal statement on today's specific raid, but maintains its right to act against outlets that jeopardize the safety of its citizens. Reacting to the escalating seizure, Al Jazeera's bureau chief Walid Al-Omari stated, "The Israeli occupation is trying to prevent the world from seeing what is happening. They are targeting the equipment because the equipment is the eye of the world on the ground." As broadcasting screens remain dark in Ramallah, international journalists are warning that the loss of independent media tools will further isolate the Palestinian people from the global stage. Now, our next story, still on the Middle East, a wave of defiance is sweeping through southern Lebanon as thousands of residents ignore fresh Israeli military evacuation orders, choosing to stay in their homes despite an escalation in airstrikes. The Israeli military issued urgent warnings on Monday morning, May 11, 2026, telling residents in 9 southern towns to flee immediately. This follows a deadly weekend where at least 87 people were killed in a series of over 100 strikes that targeted areas both north and south of Litani River. United Nations observers report that while displacement remains high, a growing number of families in towns like Nabatieh and Tyre are refusing to leave. Many cite the extreme financial cost of relocation and the poor conditions in existing government shelters, which are currently hosting over 126,000 people. The situation is particularly critical in broader villages, where infrastructure has been systematically destroyed. Local youth groups have stepped in to fill vacuums left by aid agencies, risking their lives to transport essential supplies to those who remain in the security buffer zone. Established by the IDF, Ruba Alol, a 24-year-old resident of Saksakiye, who ignored the latest warnings, expressed the resolve of her community. "We are a people who do not break. We love our land and will not abandon it despite all dangers and threats. Staying here is our way of resisting." As the threat of full escalation ground reoccupation looms, the standoff between the Israeli military and determined residents of the south continues to escalate. From stories of real human lives and faces, let's take a look at numbers and statistics on business news, where on our first story, Kenya's Treasury has excluded fresh loans from the International Monetary Funds in the new budget, signaling a shift away from relying on IMF financing for the coming financial year. The move comes amid uncertainty over negotiations between Kenya and the IMF, especially after disagreements on debt classification and strict borrowing conditions linked to a possible new support program. Instead of depending on IMF funding, the government is increasing turning to domestic borrowing, infrastructure-backed financing, and alternative lenders to support spending plans and manage debt obligations. Treasury officials believe that the strategy will give Kenya more flexibility in managing its finances without the tough policy conditions often attached to IMF loans. However, economists warn that reduced access to concessional fundings could increase pressure on local borrowing and debt servicing costs. The decision reflects growing efforts by the government to explore African-led financing options and reduce dependence on traditional international lenders as it prepares the next budget cycle. And on our next story, Kenya's private sector remains under pressure in April as rising fuel prices and high operating costs continue to weaken business activity and consumer demand. The latest Stanbic Bank Purchasing Managers Index showed that business conditions improved slightly compared to March but still remained below the growth mark for a second straight month. Companies reported lower sales and fewer new orders as customers reduced spending due to higher prices. Businesses in sectors such as retail trade, agriculture, and services were among the hardest hit, with many struggling to manage increased transport, fuel, and supply costs. Input prices rose sharply, pushing firms to increase prices for goods and services. Despite the challenges, some firms continue hiring temporary workers and increasing stock levels in anticipation of future price increase and supply disruptions. Economists say the economy remains vulnerable to global shock, especially rising energy costs linked to tensions in the Middle East. Analysts believe the slight improvement in the index may signal that the slowdown is easing, although pressure on businesses and household spending remains significant. And on our final business story, the government is increasing efforts to support micro, small, and medium enterprises through new policy reforms aimed at improving access to loans and encouraging more businesses to join the formal economy. The initiative comes as authorities and development partners step up awareness campaigns targeting small businesses, many of which still struggle to access financing and structured markets. The Micro and Small Enterprise Authority, together with development organizations, has been holding forums across different counties to connect entrepreneurs with available support programs and explain proposed policy changes. At the center of the discussion is the proposed MSME Amendment Bill 2025, which seeks to improve access to affordable credit, strengthen market opportunities, and encourage informal businesses to formalize. Officials say the formalizing businesses would help expand the tax base while also giving entrepreneurs better access to government programs, financing, and business support services. Despite the reform, businesses owners continue to face challenges such as high borrowing costs, limited collateral, and complex regulations, issues that stakeholders say must be addressed for the sector to fully grow. From numbers and statistics of business news, now let's take a look at sports news, where KCB Rugby Club are determined to finally end Cabra's Sugar's dominance when the two rivals meet in the Kenya Club final this weekend in Kakamega. The Bankers are aimed to stop Cabras from winning a fifth straight title in what has become one of Kenya's rugby's biggest rivalries. KCB head coach Andrew Amonde says his side has matured after years of rebuilding and now believes the team has what it takes to reclaim the trophy. The club heads into the finals with confidence after a strong season and an impressive semi-final victory over the Nondescripts. Their chances have also been boosted by the return of key national sevens players, adding experience, speed, and depth to the squad ahead of the decisive clash. Captain Bob Muhati says the team is focused and ready to fight for the title. Cabras, however, remains unbeaten and will enjoy home advantage at the ASK showground in Kakamega. Coach Carlos Keitwa has warned that KCB are now a much stronger side and expects a tough battle between the two teams. The final is expected to attract huge attention as KCB attempts to break the Sugar Millers' grip on the Kenya Cup crown and reclaim domestic rugby supremacy. And on our final sports stories, Kenya's top athletes received a warm welcome after returning home from Tokyo following another successful international competition. Fans, sports officials, and family members gathered at the airport to celebrate the athletes who once again raised the country's flag through strong performances on the global stage. The team delivered medals and memorable displays that reinforced Kenya's reputation as an athletics powerhouse. Among the standout performers were long-distance runners and tracksters who impressed in various events, earning praise for their determination and consistency against strong international competition. Sports officials hailed the athletes for making the country proud and inspiring young people across Kenya. Leaders also promised continued support for athletics development and preparations for future global competitions. The celebrations reflected the importance of athletics in Kenya, where success on the track continues to unite the nation and inspire upcoming talent. And before we wrap up, here's something deeply human to think about. Did you know humans are one of the only creatures known to cry because of emotions, not just pain? Unlike reflex tears caused by dust or irritation, emotional tears are connected to deep feelings like heartbreak, happiness, stress, relief, or empathy, making them one of the most personal and powerful ways humans express emotions. While many animals can make sounds or show signs of distress, emotional tears, triggered by feelings like joy, sadness, stress, love, or even relief, are considered uniquely human. Scientists believe these tears may play a role in communication and emotional bonding, helping us express feelings too deep or complex to put into words. Maybe that's why tears can say so much sometimes. They speak when words can't. In moments of overwhelming joy, grief, relief, or love, tears become a language of their own, expressing emotions too deep, complicated, or heavy to fully explain out loud. If you didn't know, dear viewers, now you know. That brings us to the end of today's program of Muslim World News. But as we've come to the end of our news bulletin, Nairobi women came together over the weekend in a powerful gathering that blended faith, finance and sisterhood during the sold-out debut of the Suhba Series. The event brought together women from different walks of life for open conversations on empowerment, financial literacy, and the realities of balancing career, family, and personal growth. I've been your host, Abdulrahman Mohamed, and it's been a pleasure having you with us. Stay informed, stay inspired, and may peace be upon you. Our reporter Fatma Hussein now brings us this special feature.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we bring you into a space where intentions meet conversations. We are here at Suhba Series, an afternoon of connection and conversations, and of course, bringing high tea.
Suhba brings together inspiring women, powerful voices, and authentic experiences in a room designed for growth, connection, and empowerment. From insightful panel discussions to heartfelt conversations and networking moments, Suhba Series is more than an event. It's a community. As the conversation continued, the panelists emphasized the importance of women embracing both faith and self-growth while navigating the realities of modern life. Halima spoke passionately about financial discipline and the importance of women understanding money, building independence, and making informed financial decisions for their future.
It's our fathers to run the homes, or the husbands to run the home. So even if someone is stable as a woman, they have their finances in order, but they won't think like, I need to do a certain thing because they know this is something that my husband needs to do.
Adding on to the discussion, Fatuma Hersi highlighted the value of community, self-confidence, and creating safe space where women can openly share their experience and challenges without judgment.
External factors will affect you, okay? So you have to be recognized externally. First of all, work on yourself, because leadership is about being comfortable in your own skin. And sometimes you would have to make uncomfortable choices, okay, when you become a leader. Of course, you don't rise to leadership straight. You go through the ranks sometimes, and you have to start from the very bottom and then rise out. So for me, I would say that to prepare yourself, there are many things that you have to do. And what I've learned is that as you improve yourself, you also then get more opportunities. Education, of course, academics matters. Not everything is about academics, but if you want to move on up into certain roles, you have to prepare for it. For instance, I did a BA at the University of Nairobi, but then I wanted to get into public relations. So I had to do a postgraduate diploma in PR, with that door to be opened for me. After 7 years, when I wanted the corner office, I had to do an MEA.
Shabana Osman encouraged women to remain grounded in faith while balancing personal ambition, family, and purpose in today's fast-changing world.
You won't expect to hear this, but I'll tell you what you would hear. Because that's what the fallacy of this world is. How I navigate who you are and who you're expected to be is I ask the whole question. Does that make sense? You remove the question itself. Because that question itself is a limitation. If you want to grow, if you want to conquer, if you want to have an identity, then you change the question and ask yourself, who do I choose to become? That is the ideal answer, and that is what Islam tells us. So what do you choose? You have the who you are, and you have the who you're expected to be. And that is what all of us face. We all face, I'm a mother, I'm a parent, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm so-and-so, and then there is all the mountain of expectation. So how do you navigate that? You actually ask yourself, is this who I want to be? And when you ask yourself, is this who I want to be? What happens? You actually choose to be the best you can be. And that is what? That is gas.
To get a sense of their experience, I asked attendee what has stood out to them the most so far.
What stood out for me was the panel discussion
where women were reminded to be authentic to themselves.
We also spoke to one of the key speakers, Nimo Jerde, and asked her what kind of impact she was hoping to create through a space like this.
Hi, this was an incredible session and definitely a milestone achieved. The objective was to bring women together, to appreciate each other and to empower each other. And we believe we have done that today in this gathering.
As the conversation continues, one thing stands out. This is more than just an event. Avenues, partner saying, that is it.